is Angela with Women's Personal Finance, and today I figured I would take a step back and talk a little bit about the origin story for Women's Personal Finance. For those of you who don't know, my very first place that I started being publicly online in the personal finance space was a blog called Tread Lightly, Retire Early, which I still do blog on occasion, but Women's Personal Finance has really taken over my online life these last few years. So back in early 2018, January 2018, so 5 years ago now, I had been reading a blog post from a male personal finance blogger who had written his favorite financial independence blogs. And there was one woman on the list. And as I read through the comments, one person asked, well, I would really love to read some stories from some other women's voices. And he responded with one or two others and said, I just don't really know any others. And by that point, I had been in the personal finance space for 8 years, 7 as a lurker, and one of them as a blogger. And I knew that off the top of my head, I could think of dozens of women writing in the personal finance and FIRE space. And so I decided to write a blog post and create a list of the bloggers in the FIRE community writing about money. And I wrote the post and published it, and I was still a newbie blogger, and so not a ton of people read what I wrote. And I woke up the next morning and realized it had completely blown up and was being shared everywhere, and that people really wanted to hear from different voices than generally the white male techie or engineer that was usually talking about money, especially when it came to financial independence, retire early. And so my list got shared a whole ton of places, and I got a ton of comments with other folks that were writing about money asking to be added to that list. And one of my blogger friends at the time, Erin, Reaching for Fi, helped me, and we created a whole long list of everyone who was sharing and updated the list to where there were over 100 names. And from there, I realized that we really needed a space to talk, not just a comment thread on someone's blog. And so with that, I created the Women's Personal Finance Facebook group. Early on, it was really a content creator space first. And then other folks started to get invited who were not creators, but still wanted a money space that was separate and a place that could really center women's voices when talking about money, and not worrying about being mansplained or talked down to or belittled or told that certain topics were not financial related or just things that people didn't want to talk about. And from there, Women's Personal Finance as a Facebook group grew and grew. And over that time, I had met Regina, who at that time was blogging over at That Frugal Pharmacist. And she and I talked and had gotten closer. She'd written a guest blog post for my blog, and she had then become an admin on the WPF Facebook group. And this was in 2020 that we started talking more seriously about turning WPF into something beyond just Facebook. Part of this was I had gotten thrown into Facebook jail because someone had called some situation a smelly potato. And I thought that was really funny. And I, basically LOL smelly potato. And the Facebook algorithm snagged me and threw me in Facebook jail for a week over that comment as going against their, community standards, which, considering a lot of the things that they leave up, it's kind of hilarious in an awful way. And it really helped us realize that we don't control the space on Facebook. And if we really wanted WPF to be something big, that we needed to have greater control over our content and over the platform that we were on. And so from there, we created an email list, and around the same time started our Ko-Fi account for the moderation team, which is, for those who don't know, a place where folks who find a lot of use out of the Facebook group and want to say thank you to our moderators and our admins, they can send a coffee, aka a cash donation, saying thank you for all the work and time and energy that you put into this space. And that was the point that we realized that people were really leaning into women's personal finance and wanted something more with that space. And so from there, Regina and I dreamed bigger about what WPF could be. And we created WPF Insiders and launched in February of 2021. And so we have had that space for 2 years. It is our premium membership community where folks are able to join once a quarter, as we keep our cohorts small to keep it a small, specialized space. And we have a Discord channel and monthly events with personal finance experts, book clubs, etc. And from there, we really realized that creating a bigger space than just the Facebook group really became magical. We also started paying writers to write blog posts for our website. We have a resource section for lots of personal finance terms and products that we think that are helpful, and really expanded out from just a Facebook platform, because there are a lot of things that you can do elsewhere that you can't just do on Facebook. And then as we continued to grow, at this point, the Facebook group is closing in on 70,000 members, which is wild considering it wasn't that long ago we had 10,000 and thought that was a big space. And we realized that we really love the Facebook community and we really love the larger group, because there's something very magical about the very small intentional community that is Insiders. There is also something very magical about tens of thousands of women and non-binary folks coming together for support and knowledge and just like a great community that is WPF. But Facebook doesn't always allow that wonderfulness that we so enjoy, and it takes a lot of time and energy on the back end. So we launched Woven, which, hi everyone who is watching this live on Woven, because that's where these videos are being filmed. And we realized that we really wanted a space for the larger WPF community without an algorithm, without Facebook encouraging and inflaming divisive content. And so we spent months and months and months dreaming and talking and making plans and creating this space on Mighty Networks, which is where Woven is hosted. And we're finding a lot of the similar things that we see on Discord and with Insiders, is that when people opt into a space, they are much more intentional about being here and kinder, gentler. And it just is allowing us to really expand and dream even further about where WPF can go in the future. So we're now in the beginning of 2023, and we are loving the suggestions that folks are giving us on Woven about what this platform can be and what we could be doing. But it really all started with a question of, where are the women talking about money? And it's interesting because it's still something that we see today, 2023. You would think we would be past this at this point, but it still comes up. A lot of the big media is still centered around men, and typically white men. And they're not the only ones interested in money and investing and beyond just budgeting and couponing. Women are extremely smart, savvy investors and are really good with money, but also it helps to have a different space where you can really lean into the way that we see the world. And so Women's Personal Finance, first and foremost, came as a place to bring people together and be a community that just didn't exist online at the time. In 2023, we're definitely seeing more of that happen. In 2017, 2018, it was just kind of accepted that the status quo was the status quo. And I feel like in the last 5 or 6 years, we've really figured out that there is a place for this discussion, and that while co-ed spaces can be great, there is something magical about a space that is only for women and non-binary folks. And so that's where WPAF started. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. But it's just, it's wild to realize that, half a decade ago, this community, this space didn't exist yet. And if it wasn't for a guy saying he couldn't think of any women, then WPF wouldn't exist as the way it does today. And it exists because of all of you. Like, as much as Regina and I are the pivot point for this community, it wouldn't exist with just us. There are a lot of content creators out there that have their brands solely around a single person or persons, and we are really proud that that's not WPF. That WPF is not just Angela. WPF is not just Regina. WPF is everyone in the community, and it feels very fitting considering we came out of a place that was literally a list of women bloggers. So it's amazing how it's changed my life. And again, we hear stories about from people whose lives have completely changed because of women's personal finance. So I'm just going to end this by saying that, you never know how much a community can change your life or change the life of people around you. And that leaning into a space and being active and engaged is really where the magic happens.